Hello, students. We are going to study W. H. Audin's poem, The Shield of Achilles. See, we have to go through the life and career about W. H. Audin. Western Hugh Audin, one of the most versatile and prolific poets of 20th century England. He was born on 21st February 1907. His mother was a nurse and father was a doctor. In 1908, Audin's family settled in Birmingham, and Dr. Audin also became a medical officer. His son, means W. H. Audin, also became a medical student and a doctor. But his interest in wide reading and literary writing, and especially poetry, that drew him to writing poetry. He was under the impact of modern poets like T.S. Eliot, and 3 years at Oxford. Somewhat literary historians speak as the period of Audin, Spender, Day, Lewis, and Isherwood. These five poets were dominating in the literary world, and that is what his friends pictured him, the peculiar fantasy life and his new type of psychology that he proposed and he advocated. He collaborated with the other fellow dramatist and wrote several dramas in collaboration with them. So, the Dance of Death, the Orators, the Skin, Fred and Groddick, these are so called, we see, a literary work of art that he was awarded Pulitzer Prize for literature in 1948. He was a professor at Michigan University. He worked as a professor in Swarthmore College. He uh, he was awarded as a Bollingen Prize in 1955. He was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Now, we have to study the mythical poem, The Shield of Achilles. Achilles, as we know, is a historical character as per Greek mythology taken from Horace's Iliad. And the poem is an artistic poem. The two pictures are juxtaposed throughout this particular poem. The two pictures are the modern day's conditions and the artistic world that is depicted on the sacred so called Achilles' shield. There is art inscribed the the shield of Achilles that is displayed in the museum, and another one that is of the contemporary world. So, like this, we do have this type of, say, things that we see here. Okay, see. So, before going into the details, this preliminary information about the poem is going to be useful for all of us. Now, we had to go through the shield of Achilles and what it stands for. See, she looked over his shoulder for vines and olive trees, marble well governed cities, and ship upon wine dark sea. And there on the shining meadow His hands had put instead an artificial wilderness and a sky like lead. So she looked, means Achilles' mother looked on her son's shoulder, and she looked over his shoulder for vines and olive trees. She, she, she could see the shoulder and actually the shield. It is inscribed on on the shield. The shield was made for him by the Hephaestus, the blacksmith of God. So the shield is a symbol of art. It mirrors, it reflects the culture and conditions of the life prevailing at that particular time in the classical era. So, the shield of Achilles was very well decorated with beautiful scenes, vines, and olive trees were carved on that. It mirrors the Greek culture and way of life. There were marble, means very well marble decorated, well governed cities. जिथं खूप सुशासन आहे अशा सर्व सिटीजचं चित्र असे बिल्डिंग्स त्या ठिकाणी मार्बल बिल्डिंग्स त्या ठिकाणी दिसतात विच हॅड अ ब्युटिफुल से पोर्ट्रेल अँड शिप अपॉन वाईन डार्क सीज सी there are beautiful Greek ship which is sailing across the wild and stormy sea. See, it is not being destroyed upon the wide dark seas. See, there on the metal, shining metal, his hands had put instead an artificial wilderness. See, on the shining metal means the world, the modern world, its shining surface, the hands of the blacksmith, the shield of modern days, shining metal. His hands had put instead an artificial wilderness. It is not the wilderness that we see in the shield, but it is the wilderness of the modern age. And the sky is lit just like a black. It is totally black one. It symbolizes the blackness, ugliness, murkiness, industrial civilization, urban civilization, modern civilization, industrialization, and the pollution that we can see in the modern shining artificial world. A plain without a feature, bare and brown, no blade of grass, no sign of neighborhood. Nothing to eat, nowhere to sit down. Yet congregated on that blankness stood an unintelligible multitude. A million eyes, a million boots in line without expression, waiting for a sign. See, a plain without a feature. It's a plain, bare and brown. No blade of grass, no sign of neighborhood. Nothing to eat, nowhere to sit down. Yet congregated on that blankness stood unintelligible multitude. A million eyes, million boots in line without expression, waiting for a sign. There is, see, there is a plain land आहे, जमीन आहे, ओपन स्पेस आहे, बेअर अँड ब्राऊन आहे, ब्राऊन कलरचा आहे, बेअर आहे, तिथे काहीही दिसत नाही. अशा ब्राऊन ठिकाणी नथिंग टू ईट, काही नाही खाण्यासाठी. Modern day, no one lives there, no sign of neighborhood. In a city, man, Man is lonely. Even in a crowd, there are no friends, there are no neighbors. It is an era of shortage, nothing to eat, nowhere to sit down. In this particular land, all those men have congregated together, and there stood an unintelligible multitude. The masses are unable to communicate their emotions and feelings. The picture is absolutely of desolation, barrenness. There is a blankness. And there, in the open space, millions of soldiers are standing in a line, ready to march as soon as they are ordered to do so. Are you getting me? समजतंय का तुम्हाला? Huh? See, the masses are unable to communicate their emotions and feelings, their spiritual loneliness. Millions of boots in line. They are waiting for the orders to come and march on for the war with their guns, with their battle, with their battle armistice. शस्त्रांनी तयार असणं, gun, machine guns. They are waiting for the orders to come. The soldiers are ready to march and kill those who are in the enemy. Men are like a drum driven cattle in the modern age. Their faces are black. They are absolutely emotionless. No emotions can be located on their face, seen on their face. The entire stanza is so symbolic of spiritual desolation and deadness in the modern age. Out of the air, a voice without a face, proved by statistics that some cause was just, in tones as dry and levels as the plus. No one was cheered, nothing was discussed. Column by column, in a cloud of dust, they marched away, enduring a bluff whose logic brought them somewhere else to grip. Dictators, military commanders are there. They speak to the people over the radio. They are giving orders over the radio. The soldiers are waiting for the orders. Only the voice is heard, the face is not seen over the radio. The commands are given to the soldiers. The impersonal voice tells the people that their cause is just, they must die for it. And the people or the soldiers needs to obey their voice. Dry and level. There is emotionless. See, nothing was discussed. Nothing was cheered. The questions were neither asked nor answered. The people who must obey and do not ask the questions, they marched away in tones as dry and level. There is an enduring bluff for just this cause. Natural consequences is going to be there. They marched away. Column by column, the soldiers are marching one after another. असे तुकड्याच्या तुकड्या एका मागून एका लाईनमध्ये त्यांच्या पावलाने उमटलेल्या धुळीमध्ये मार्च करत हे सोल्जर्स पुढे चाललेले आहेत. ते मार्च्ड अवे, एन्ड्युरिंग अ ग्रिफ. ते सर्व बिलीफ, विचार कोणत्या लॉजिकने ते इथं युद्धभूमीमध्ये आल्यात, पण हे जात असताना ते दुःखात जात आहेत. Somewhere else, Look at Zadat. She looked over his shoulder. The mother looks over his shoulder for ritual pieties. There are religious sites, ceremonies that are engraved on the shield of Achilles. White flower garlanded heifers. There are heifers who are garlanded. See, libation and sacrifice. There is a libation. It's a kind of a offering sweets to the god, sacrifices to the god after the religious ceremony. There is on shining metal where the altar should have been, she saw by his flickering force light. She was looking after that. She saw the flickering forge light, quite another scene. On the shining, modern shining sail, shield, there is a dim light. It's the creation of the modern blacksmiths. Barbed wire enclosed in arbitrary spot where board officials lounged and sentries sweetened, for the day was hot. See, a crowd of ordinary decent folk watched from without, and neither moved nor spoke. To three pale figures were laid forth and bound to three posts driven upright in the ground. There are the barbed wires. There are enclosed arbitrary spots. It was the concentration camp. The barbed wire, there is a concentration camp in which the prisoners of the war were kept. Sentries, board officials, they are lounging there, they are staying there. And sentries means soldiers, sweetened for the day was hot. The soldiers were sweating. The enemy had captured the war. They were tied to the three sticks and shot dead. The passage is thus the mockery of the crucifixion of Christ. The crowd was a decent folk, watched without and neither moved nor spoke. The three pale figures were led forth and bound to three posts driven upright in the ground. The enemy, they were the enemy captured in the war. They were tied to the three sticks, and some of them were shot dead. There were three posts. They are driven upright in the ground. The mass and majesty of this world, all that carries weight, always weighs the same, lay in the hands of others. They were small and could not hope for help. No help came. What their foes liked to do was done. Their shame was all the worst could wish. They lost their pride and died as men before their bodies died. See the mass. Three soldiers who were shot dead by their generals, by their rulers. They can do anything with the lives of human beings in the concentration camp. The rulers, they called the noblest and most majestic of men. They were thus befooled into undertaking the hazards of war. That carries weight. They are very important. They always leads. It is the terrible exposure that we see in the dictatorship of the modern era lay in the hands of others. On see, those who are helpless in the clutches of the enemy, they were helpless. Now they realize their own insignificance. They believed they suffered the worst possible distress. They were small but could not help for others. No help came. They were so pathetic that they could not do anything. No help can be sent for them. What their foes like to do was done. Those who are enemy, what they wish is done to the captured soldiers. पकडलेल्या सैन्याला, शत्रूच्या सैन्याला, पकडलेल्या लोकांना एनिमी म्हणून डांबून ठेवलं जायचं आणि त्यांना काहीही त्यांच्याशी केलं जायचं. शूट करणं, बलात्कार करणं, their shame, त्यांना see everything that was done to these in this concentration camps was all the worst could wish. They lost their pride and died as men before their bodies died. Odin has in mind they are dying. Their death is so pathetic, so distressing that she looked over his shoulder. For athletes in their games, see, the mother looks on the Achilles shield. The world of games and sports is being played on the Achilles shield. They are moving, dancing scenes, beautiful beauties and beautiful girls are moving in a rhythmic harmony. Men and women in a dance, moving their sweet limbs, quick to music, but there's a shining shield. His hands had set no dancing floor, but weak chalked field. But in the modern shining shield, modern एजच्या असलेल्या shining shield वर there is a no dancing floor, but it's a chalked field, weed chalked. जी झाडं, रोपटं जी सुकून गेले, त्याचे फक्त वीड्स राहिलेले आहेत, काठ्या राहिलेल्या आहेत, काड्या राहिलेल्या आहेत. त्याने पूर्ण चॉक झालेलं फील्ड फक्त पाहायला मिळतं मॉडर्न एजमध्ये. Ragged urchin, aimless and alone, loitered about that vacancy. A bird flew to safety from his well-aimed stone. That girls are ripe to boys' knife a third, by axioms to him who would never heard of any world where promises were kept, or one could weep because another wept. The poet is again. In the rock urchin, not any handsome athlete, but a boy in tattoos and shabby, awkward look. There is the sweet chalk field. It's kind of a vast land. There a bird flew. तिथं उडत उडत एक पक्षी आलेला. And there is an urchin. एक urchin जो आहे aimless and alone असतो, त्या पक्षावर नेम धरतो. आणि इथं दगड येत असताना तो पक्षी ते टाळण्यासाठी प्रयत्न करत असतो. That girls are rapt. Two boys knife a third. दोन मुलं तिसऱ्याला ठार करतायत. गर्ल्स वर रेप होत आहेत. Where axioms to him. हेच तर जगाचं मॉडर्न एजमधलं हेच तर सत्य आहे. इट्स सम वेल नोन ट्रूथ. एक्झिओम्स म्हणजे वेल नोन ट्रूथ. दिस सिम्बॉलिक कंटेम्पररी वेस्ट लँडर या निरुपयोगी असलेल्या जगामध्ये राहत असलेले लोक या अशा पद्धतीच्या कर्मामध्ये कृत्यामध्ये अडकून पडली आहेत. Two boys knife a third. Girls are raped. Noble world of the past when people were truthful and sympathetic. The qualities unknown in the modern age. A thin-lipped armor. Hephaestus hobbled away. Thetis of shining breast cried out in dismay at what the god had wrought to please her son, the strong iron-hearted man slaying Achilles, who would not live long. There is the armor, maker of the armor, blacksmith. Hephaestus was the blacksmith of God. He was symbolic of artists in the past as well as in the present. Thetis, the mother of Achilles, there she stands for the audience. She is watching this. Who would not live long? Who would going to stay here? War is destructive. None can escape from the falling of a victim to it. This is the symbol, moral of this lyric. This poem reflects the audience Christian theology. Thetis in shining breast cried out in dismay. Thetis was very disturbed. She is crying in the dismay. What the god had tried to please her son, the iron-hearted man slaying Achilles, who would not live long. But in the modern age, the art, the things that are held high are not going to live long. Such is the conditions of the modern age that we see in this particular poem. Thank you.